You'll never succeed. You're nothing. Get out of my house. Those were the last words my brother said to me before he slammed the door in my face. I was only 21, standing on the front porch with nothing but a backpack and a heart shattered into pieces. That night, I didn't just lose a home, I lost family. I lost belonging. And for a long time, I thought I lost myself. But here's what my brother didn't know. His rejection, his cruelty, his disbelief would one day become the fire that drove me. Because years later, I wouldn't just survive. I wouldn't just succeed. I would come back, not as the broken little brother he abandoned, but as the man who bought his company, the man who became his boss. This is my story, and maybe it's yours too. Growing up, my brother Michael was everything I wasn't. He was older by 5 years, stronger, sharper, louder. The kind of kid who always won the games, always took the last piece of cake, always commanded the room. And me? I was the quiet one, the dreamer, the one who loved books, who sketched in the margins of my notebooks, who believed in possibilities bigger than the walls of our small-town home. For a while, that difference didn't matter. When I was little, Michael was my hero. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to skip stones across the lake, how to climb the old oak tree in our backyard. I followed him everywhere. But as we grew older, something shifted. Michael didn't see me as a brother anymore. He saw me as competition. It started small, snide remarks, little digs. Why don't you play a real sport instead of drawing all day? You'll never get a girlfriend if you keep acting weird. At first, I laughed them off, but over time, the words grew sharper. The jabs turned to knives, and by the time I was a teenager, it felt like everything I did was wrong in his eyes. The breaking point at home. Our parents weren't much help. Dad worked long hours, Mom was tired, and arguments between us brothers were brushed aside with, "Boys will be boys. Don't take it so seriously." But I did, because words cut deep. I still remember the night of my high school graduation. While other families cheered and clapped, Michael pulled me aside, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you're going places with those stupid dreams? Newsflash, you'll never make it. The world will eat you alive." I wanted to fight back, to scream that he was wrong. But instead, I swallowed the hurt, smiled for the pictures, and buried the ache inside me. The final blow. The real fracture came a year later. I had just dropped out of college. I couldn't afford tuition, and our parents couldn't help. I took odd jobs to get by, stocking shelves, flipping burgers, cleaning offices late at night. One evening, I came home exhausted, uniform stained with grease, and Michael was waiting. He didn't waste time. He launched straight into his attack. "You're pathetic. You're dragging this family down. You'll never succeed. In fact, you're not even my brother anymore. Get out." And then, the slam of the door. That was it. I was out. No money, no home, no family. Just the echo of his words haunting me. "You'll never succeed." The first night on the streets was the coldest of my life, not just because of the biting wind that cut through my thin jacket, but because of the emptiness gnawing inside me. I slept under a bridge, clutching my backpack like it held the last fragments of who I was. Inside were 3 shirts, a notebook, a broken phone, and a sketchbook filled with designs I dreamed of one day turning into real products. Dreams. That's all I had. But dreams don't fill your stomach. The harsh reality days blurred into weeks. I scavenged for food, begged for spare change, and took whatever temporary work I could find. Dishwashing, janitorial work, passing out flyers on street corners. Each dollar was survival. But survival is a cruel teacher. I learned the sting of hunger, the shame of pitying glances, the way people look through you when you're wearing the same clothes for the third week in a row. And through it all, Michael's voice was there. You'll never succeed. The lowest point. There was one night, one I'll never forget, when I almost gave up. I had gone 2 days without eating, and I sat outside a diner watching people laugh and share meals I couldn't afford. I felt invisible, unwanted, like maybe Michael was right. Maybe I was nothing. That night, I curled up in an alley and whispered to myself, maybe it would be easier if I just stopped trying. But then, something happened. A stranger, a man in a worn coat, stopped and handed me a sandwich. He didn't say anything, just smiled and walked away. It wasn't the food that saved me. It was the reminder that kindness still existed, that maybe I still mattered. And in that moment, a spark lit inside me, a tiny, fragile flame. The turning point. I realized something important that night. Michael's words didn't have to be my truth. Yes, I was broke, homeless, alone. But I wasn't finished. I still had my notebook, my ideas, my dreams. And maybe, just maybe, they could be my way out. Building from nothing. So I started hustling differently. Instead of just working odd jobs, I looked for opportunities. I offered to design flyers for local shops. Cheap, scrappy, hand-drawn at first, then digitized on borrowed computers at the library. I took on any freelance gig I could find. Logos, menus, posters. The money was small, but it was something. And more importantly, it reminded me of who I was. Not nothing. Not a failure, but someone who could create. The long nights. There were still nights I slept in shelters, still days I went hungry, still mornings when the weight of it all nearly crushed me. But every time I felt like quitting, I heard Michael's voice again. And instead of breaking me, it fueled me, because one day, I swore I would prove him wrong. The first win, months later. A small cafe owner loved the flyer I designed so much that he recommended me to 3 other businesses. That one job became a ripple effect. Soon, I wasn't just surviving. I was slowly building something. A portfolio, a reputation, a sliver of hope. And though I didn't know it then, those humble beginnings, the dirty clothes, the borrowed computers, the late nights at the library, were laying the foundation for something far greater than I could imagine. Something that would one day change everything. From survival to vision. The cafe flyer was a small job, $20 for a few sketches and some lettering. But to me, it was the seed of something far bigger. Because for the first time, someone had paid me for my ideas, not for my labor, not for scrubbing floors or flipping burgers, but for something I created with my own hands and mind. And in that moment, I realized maybe my ideas could be worth more than I ever thought. The early grind. I chased every opportunity I could find. Posters for laundromats, logos for food trucks, menus for diners. I charged next to nothing, sometimes $5-10 just to get the work. At the library, I'd sit for hours, teaching myself design software from free tutorials, sketching out mock brands for businesses that didn't even exist. I wasn't just working. I was building a skill, building a portfolio, building a dream. The first team. But dreams need people. At the shelter one night, I met Marcus, a college dropout like me, but with a gift for coding. He saw me sketching in my notebook and leaned over. Ever thought about turning those designs into websites? That one question changed everything. Marcus and I became partners. I handled the visuals. He handled the tech. Together, we started pitching ourselves not just as freelancers, but as a team. And suddenly, we weren't just designing flyers. We were building websites. The struggle to scale. But growth wasn't easy. Clients ghosted us. Payments came late, or not at all. There were nights Marcus and I split a single sandwich, laughing about how we were CEOs of starvation. We worked out of coffee shops, libraries, even park benches with stolen Wi-Fi. Most people looked at us like we were crazy. Two broke kids pretending to be entrepreneurs. And maybe we were. But we were also relentless. The pitch that changed it all. One day, Marcus found a listing online. A mid-sized local business, an auto parts distributor, was looking for someone to redesign their outdated website. The project was worth $5,000. To us, that number might as well have been $1 million. We had never handled anything that big. We didn't even have an office. But we had guts. So we walked into that boardroom, two kids in borrowed suits, clutching a laptop that barely worked, and we pitched like our lives depended on it. And you know what? We won. When the client shook our hands and signed the contract, Marcus and I looked at each other like we had just robbed a bank. That deal wasn't just money. It was legitimacy. The birth of a company. With that $5,000, we rented a tiny office. Bare walls, one desk, two folding chairs. But it was ours. We named the company Phoenix Creative. Because just like the mythical bird, we were rising from ashes. The long nights of building. From there, everything accelerated. Small businesses led to bigger ones. Word of mouth spread. Within a year, we had 5 employees, designers, coders, marketers. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were building something real. But with growth came pressure. Payroll to meet, clients to satisfy, competitors to fight off. There were months when I thought it would all collapse. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered Michael. You'll never succeed. And those words pushed me harder. The first major breakthrough. 2 years in, we landed our biggest client yet, a regional retail chain that needed a full digital rebrand. The project was worth 6 figures, and it terrified me. I stayed awake nights, scribbling designs, second-guessing myself, terrified of failing. But Marcus reminded me, we're not here because of luck. We're here because we fought for it. So we delivered. And when the campaign launched, the client's sales soared. Suddenly, we weren't just another small agency. We were the agency people talked about. Recognition articles in local papers. Invites to speak at small business events. Awards we never dreamed of winning. It felt surreal. The kid who once begged for food was now shaking hands with CEOs. But success didn't erase the scars. Because no matter how high I climbed, Michael's voice was always there. And in quiet moments, I wondered, what would he say if he saw me now? The ghost of the past. I hadn't spoken to Michael in years. Last I heard, he had joined a mid-sized tech company. He was climbing too, becoming a manager, maybe even a director by now. And though I hated to admit it, I still measured myself against him. Not because I wanted his approval, but because I wanted to prove, to myself, to him, to the world, that I was more than what he believed. The first confrontation. The day finally came. I was at a regional business expo, speaking on a panel about entrepreneurship. Afterwards, as I shook hands with attendees, I saw him, Michael, older, sharper, still carrying himself with that same air of superiority. Our eyes met. He smirked. Well, well, look who made it out of the gutter. I braced for more venom, but instead, he leaned in and said something that made my blood run cold. You're competing in the wrong league, little brother. And if you keep going, you'll find out just how out of your depth you are. It wasn't a reunion. It was a warning. And for the first time, I realized our paths weren't just crossing. They were colliding. Fuel to the fire. That night, I stared at the ceiling of my apartment, his words echoing in my mind. But instead of breaking me, they lit a fire. Because if Michael thought I was out of my depth, then I would dive deeper. I would build higher. I would rise further. Not just to survive, not just to prove him wrong, but to become unstoppable. Scaling up. The next 3 years were a blur of growth. We expanded to multiple cities. Our team grew to 50 employees. We launched marketing campaigns for national brands. Investors started knocking. Partnerships blossomed. We were no longer Phoenix Creative, the scrappy little agency. We were Phoenix Creative, the rising powerhouse. And with every milestone, I felt the past loosening its grip. But Michael's shadow was never far. The twist of fate. One afternoon, Marcus walked into my office, pale. He dropped a folder on my desk. You're not gonna believe this. I opened it. Inside were documents about a struggling company looking for buyers. The name on the folder made my heart stop. It was Michael's company. The very company he had bragged about. The one he said was too big for me to ever compete with. And now, it was bleeding, losing clients, losing money, and up for acquisition. I closed the folder slowly, my hands trembling. This wasn't just business anymore. This was destiny. The boy who had once been thrown out with nothing now had the chance to walk back in, not as the broken little brother, but as the man who would buy the company that once defined Michael's pride. And for the first time in my life, I smiled. Because this wasn't just a rise, it was a reckoning. Years passed, not months, not just a season of success. Years. By then, the empire I had built was steady. My company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. New offices had opened in different cities. I had a team that believed in me, a group of people who treated me not as a boss, but as someone they trusted to lead them forward. And yet, even in the glow of success, there was always a shadow in the back of my mind. The shadow of my brother. The ghost of the past people assume that once you make it, every scar magically heals, that the applause of strangers fills the holes left behind by the silence of family. It doesn't. I'd wake some nights remembering the look on his face when he said I'd never succeed, remembering the moment he turned his back, closed that door, and left me on the streets. And in those quiet hours, I asked myself, what is the point of success if deep down you still feel incomplete? The unexpected call. One ordinary afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years. At first, I almost ignored it, but something in my chest told me to pick up. It was him, my brother. His voice wasn't sharp or arrogant this time. It was tired, defeated. He said, I heard what you've done. I heard you own the company now. I don't even know what to say. There was a pause, a long one. Then he added softly, I need help. The meeting, We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe. When I walked in and saw him, my heart twisted. He wasn't the strong, domineering figure I remembered. His hair had thinned, his shoulders stooped. His eyes, once burning with pride, looked hollow. He had lost everything: bad deals, broken trust, debts he couldn't escape. The very same pride that once made him throw me out had now eaten him alive. And in that moment, I realized something. He wasn't my enemy. He was a broken man. The choice. I had two options. I could spit back every word he had thrown at me. I could let him taste the bitterness of rejection, the humiliation of being powerless. Or I could choose something different. I leaned forward and said calmly, "You once told me I'd never succeed. But you were wrong. I did succeed. And not because of you, but in spite of everything. The truth is, I don't need to see you suffer to feel complete. I needed to see myself rise. And I did." He bowed his head, silent. Then I added, "If you're willing to change, I'll help you. Not as your boss, not even as your rival, but as your brother." Redemption. For the first time in decades, I saw tears in his eyes. Not anger, not shame, but genuine regret. He whispered, "I'm sorry." Those two words didn't erase the years of pain. They didn't erase the hunger, the nights alone, the scars I carried. But they were enough. Enough to start something new. We didn't become best friends overnight. Forgiveness isn't magic, it's work. But slowly, step by step, we began building a fragile bridge back to one another. Reflection. Looking back now, I see that my brother was both my greatest wound and my greatest teacher. Without his rejection, I might never have discovered my resilience. Without his betrayal, I might never have lit the fire to build my future. Life is strange like that. Sometimes the person who breaks you is the very one who sets you on the path to becoming whole. So what do I take from all of this? That revenge feels empty. That true strength isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right. That forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for your own freedom. And if you're listening to this, carrying wounds of your own, wondering if you'll ever heal, remember this: you don't have to wait for an apology to start living. You don't have to wait for others to believe in you before you believe in yourself. Because at the end of it all, peace doesn't come from what others give you. It comes from what you choose to release. If you've stayed with me through this journey, then maybe, just maybe, my story is also your story. Because deep down, we've all been told at some point, you can't, you won't, you'll never succeed. And sometimes, those words come not from strangers, but from the people closest to us, the ones we love, the ones we expect to stand by us. But here's the truth I've learned, and the truth I want you to carry with you after this story ends. Your worth is not defined by their belief. Your future is not limited by their doubt. A different ending. When my brother told me I'd never succeed, I thought my life was over. I thought his words were final. But the truth is, his words were just the beginning of mine. I didn't just rise to prove him wrong. I rose to prove myself right. And along the way, I discovered that success isn't the fancy office, the bank account, or even the title of boss. Success is waking up every morning knowing you refuse to give up. It's building something that once only lived in your imagination. It's turning your scars into lessons and your pain into power. To you who's listening now, maybe you've been betrayed, Maybe you've been doubted. Maybe life has thrown you out into the cold, and you don't know if you'll ever find your way back. But let me tell you this. Every rejection can be the seed of your redirection. Every no can lead you closer to your yes. Every person who shuts a door in your face gives you the chance to build your own house, with doors only you decide to open or close. Final words. So as this story ends, I don't want you to remember the betrayal. I don't want you to remember the revenge. I want you to remember this. You are stronger than you think. You are braver than you know. And you are capable of more than anyone has ever told you. And maybe one day, when you look back on your journey, you'll realize, just like I did, that the people who doubted you were never your ending. They were just the spark that lit your beginning. So go, write your own story, build your own success, and never, ever let someone else's voice be louder than your own. Because in the end, the only person who gets to decide whether you succeed is you.